This is Isaac Israel, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, fine folks out there. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. Please encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. It does a lot for my self-esteem. Today's guest is a national touring comedian with an Amazon Prime special and a documentary called Drive-In Comedy Show. He has over 100 radio, TV, and podcast appearances. He's also the owner and the producer of the Tickle Me Comedy Club and several shows in Las Vegas and around the United States. Please welcome Isaac Israel to the show. How you doing, Isaac?
Great. Thanks, Matt.
I'm so happy to have you on because you have a cool background. You're not just a producer, but you're also a performer. And I know it didn't start that way. Where did you grow up, Isaac?
So I grew up in northern New Jersey, about 10 miles away from New York City, and a little town called Saddlebrook, New Jersey. And I was born actually in Jersey City. So I lived there until I got into my early 30s. Then I moved to Las Vegas.
So your kind of formation years were in the East Coast, a hotbed of comedy. What were your first, I guess, club experiences or the comedians that stick out to you?
Yeah, so I got lucky because New York City has like the greatest clubs, right? So I was performing at the Broadway Comedy Club, Caroline's, Gotham Comedy Club, and I would perform there because it was just my first couple of years. I had performed there during the showcase nights, right? So there'd be like 15, 20 comics going up on stage. You'd get bumped by celebrities like, Jerry Seinfeld, Jim Gaffigan, Judah Freelander, all these great comics. But you didn't care because you got to talk to them, you got to hang out with them. It was a pretty cool experience. I think that all comics should do at least 1 year or more in New York City.
Oh, it's a rite of passage, and that's the first place I ever performed. I was interning at Conan O'Brien, and within like a couple weeks, people are so I hate to use this word, but they're honestly very friendly there. And I know it might sound strange, but you can do 4 or 5 shows in a night when you're just starting out. Where in Los Angeles, where I was living at the time, that's pretty impossible. I mean, it's if you do more than one, you're pretty lucky. But so you obviously had the bug to get up on stage. But before that, like who were some of the comedians that inspired you to get into this funky world?
It's crazy because I think 3 years before I started stand-up, I went to a show at the Comedy Cellar, and it was like a 10 o'clock show, and the show was done, and then the host comes up and says, hey, we have one more comic tonight, and then Dave Chappelle comes on. And Dave Chappelle goes, yeah, I'll be talking for the next 4 hours. And everybody was laughing, right? And then he talked for the next 4 hours. And, I was with my ex-wife at the time, who's Filipino, and he was talking about his Filipino wife. And, after the show, we got out of the Comedy Cellar, and we spoke for like an hour outside of the Comedy Cellar. This was the night before Thanksgiving in 2008, 2009, sometime around then. And, it was a really cool experience.
And for people who are unfamiliar with the Comedy Cellar, it's pretty iconic, but it's low ceiling. It probably seats, I'm guessing, around 100, maybe 150. Noam Dworman is...
Yeah, they pack the people in there, like around 120, I'd say.
And obviously, you're in the comedy club business too, and there's not really one size that fits all. But what do you look for, whether you're performing or if you're going to produce a show, when it comes to kind of like the architecture or the feel of a club?
Yeah. So, I think, I really like clubs that have like low ceilings, no windows. I like them to, I don't mind that gritty basement feel, but I'm in my 40s now, so
Me too. Yeah,
I like a little bit of a nicer club, that
you like some elbow room.
yeah, some elbow room. Like people don't feel like they're dirty when they walk into it. It's yeah. I'm like, hey, maybe, maybe a little nicer place, a comfortable place to go to with just good service and friendly people, and a nice stage. It doesn't have to be really big. It just has to have you know nice screens, a nice backdrop, just a nice place to perform in, and,
Yeah,
and
it's it.
and I like it to look good on camera.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a pretty new thing because even 20 years ago, it was kind of rare to have cameras in clubs. I mean, maybe the club
Yeah,
would do it as a promotion, but it was kind of a speakeasy. Now it's sort of like understood there's going to be a camera aspect.
right, right.
So you're at the show. David Chappelle does 4 hours. You talk with him afterwards. How did that change your outlook on stand up?
Um, I just realized that at that point, stand-up comedians are regular people too, and they have lives, and yeah, I mean, Dave Chappelle even talked about how he took his Filipino wife, his kids, and his Filipino mother-in-law and traveled to all these different parts in the Philippines. And I'm like, wow, comedians can make that much money to all the world, And at the time, he had or he had left MTV already. So, um, I mean, Comedy Central. He left Comedy Central already, and so he was doing that. He was just doing the local club scene tour, not being public at all. And so even with that kind of salary, he was getting around.
Well, he turned down like 40 something million, and this was in the early 2000s. So that would be like 300 million in today's dollars, I think. And I remember that time, 2007, I was in LA, and he would just show up at the Laugh Factory sometimes, and it was like he was getting back to the grind again. And that
Yeah,
was something that stuck out. It's like he was probably the biggest comedian in the world, and he had to work on material. It wasn't just a given that everything he said would be funny. Like,
yeah,
what do you think are some of the, I guess, misconceptions about stand-up comedy from people who have never grabbed a mic?
yeah. You can't just go up there and talk. I mean, sure, you could go up there and talk maybe 5-10 minutes, but then if you're really a naturally funny person, but then after that, it just, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like on a consistent everyday basis if you're just starting out. All the crowds are different. You have to play to the crowds, and so yeah. I mean, headliners for a long time will go up and sometimes they'll have a bad night. Comedians have bad nights.
Yeah, I remember watching Jerry Seinfeld at the Melrose Improv, and he was working on stuff. And I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't really anything that would make it to his televised hour. And that was one of my favorite shows because I was like you said, he had a bad night, and it made me feel better about my pathetic existence.
Yeah, I mean, I love it when I see them at when I see celebrity comedians at those places, like they just use them as an open mic, It's like
Mhm.
they use comedy clubs as an open mic.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're not making enough to like they'll have their
Yeah,
notes out and they'll kind of dick around with it, but they got to work out somewhere.
yeah, exactly.
So, what were some of the first places you worked out your material at?
So, well, I did that open mic scene in New York City. So, the Grizzly Bear, the Creek and Cave, the New York Comedy Club. There were so many different kinds of open mics all over. Different kinds of rooms, not just bars, but little warehouses and studios and all kinds of things. My backyard in New Jersey, I'd have people on the deck, on the patio. I'd have like 100 people out there just in the backyard, and me and a bunch of comedians would just my living room at my house. We would do. I mean, I would get in my house. I'd get like in New Jersey, I'd get like 40 people over there inside. It's in the backyard. I'd get 100 people, and we'd bring out a mic and a speaker. We just do comedy, and everybody would be drinking and eating. So anywhere and everywhere we tried it. So movie theaters.
And yeah, I mean, there's movie theaters. There's a porch comedy tour. Like it's really changed. I mean, it shows
Yeah.
it's one of the lowest cost, productions.
Yeah.
You really just need a microphone, and that's pretty much it. So
Yeah.
I remember doing open mics, and to me it was pretty different when I started doing booked shows or paid rooms where the audience wasn't just aspiring comics or or bitter people who couldn't afford therapy. What
Yeah.
was your experience like when you when you went from entertaining comedians to quote unquote civilians?
Yeah, you really feel like a star, and everything that you've worked on, you could see, like I felt like I could see the fruits of my labor, because this is actually a crowd that likes comedy, that's there for comedy and appreciates comedy, and they were paying to see a comedy show, and so they appreciated it more, and they're ready to have a good time, and they're drinking it. I'm like, wow, this is a great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that stuck out for me is I remember in the call it early 2000s, a lot of the open micers, we would try to um, almost scare each other with our like who could do the darkest jokes, and then that wouldn't translate well
Yeah.
to regular people who are more like stable. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. What changes did you see, like in terms of like when you kind of got out of the New York, New Jersey bubble? Like were audiences the same? Were they different? What was your experience like?
Yeah, like, New York comedy, it's a little more like intellectual, less act outs, right?
Hmm.
And then you go to like the West Coast and you see more like maybe goofier comedy and more act outs, and then you go down, I don't know, I like you go down to the South, and you talk about, country, the country life, um and then whenever you're in a big city, the comedy is a little more intellectual, which is pretty cool. um yeah, I mean, um I think each area has its own distinct, you know um preferences of what they like to hear, and I guess that's why, comedians travel all over the country, even all over the world, before they actually do their special, to see where all the jokes will work.
Well, and that's an interesting aspect of this is like a joke could work really well one place, and then the next night it'll flatline.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you're right. Because like I remember performing in Salem and performing in Portland, Oregon. Right, Portland, very liberal, Salem
right.
conservative. So some jokes that you could do in Salem, you can't do in Portland, and that's only what, an hour, 2 hours away.
Hmm. Yeah, and even you could have the same venue, but a 7 o'clock show versus a 9 o'clock show. One's a little drunker. I mean, it's just it.
There you go.
What tips do you have for performers so when they're dealing with stuff like that, that doesn't just like wreck their psyche?
In terms of like what, in encountering different crowds, or like,
Yeah, like when you have tried and true material, or like you're
yeah,
confident in something, but it's never going to be great 100% of the time, or like there's some variability. Like I guess at what point do you have to stick to your guns and say I like this versus it's
yeah,
ultimately up to the crowd?
yeah, yeah. Always, you're the one in charge. You're the one in control, and
Hmm.
so you will it on the crowd that, hey, they will like this, or you will like this, right? And but at the same time, go with your instincts. If you feel something going a different way, go with it.
Right.
Usually, your instincts are right on stage. Um, but the two things have to work hand in hand, because if you're not in command, then people can feel it. And then at the same time, so that's happening, right? But then at the same time, you're also there to have fun. So
Hmm.
you need to be having fun while all of this is happening in your brain, and or else, they won't be having fun. Yeah,
No, that's so true. I mean, you have to have fun, and like you said, you're the one in command because even if a joke doesn't work, they don't know that. They don't know what your intent was. So if you can kind of be in the moment, I think it's better
right.
for the performer and the audience. And that's what makes live entertainment fun. I mean, you could just watch something on Netflix if you didn't want to have that
Yeah,
uncertainty or the interaction with the crowd.
Yeah, you just have to be in the zone of the place. You have to be present. So, it's good to get there half an hour and a half early just to get a feel for the place. And then just be ready to explode with your set on stage, just like ready to make it happen. And when I say explode, I mean like you don't have to be wild and crazy or whatever. You could do who you are, your persona on stage, but just in a big and confident way.
Right, right. Yeah, like not everyone has to be Gallagher or Carrot Top. There's
Yeah,
room for Stephen Wrights or like Maria
yeah,
Bamford. There's a wide spectrum.
yeah.
Um, I need to plug my book, Greg Giraldo, Comedian Story, available on Amazon and other fine retailers. But
Awesome.
he was my favorite comic, at least my favorite comic I wrote a book about. But that was certainly about an established comic, and it was telling his story. You wrote a book that I think will appeal to a lot of people who listen to this program. Can you share with the audience what your book's about?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, uh, was it 10 or 12 years? Wait, how long was it? 12 years ago, I came to Vegas. And, you know, I, I was just in comedy a couple of years and I was just trying to figure out how to do comedy full time. Okay. But only having 2 years of experience. So when it's like you only have 2 years, like one or 2 years of experience. Like, how are you going to make money at this, right? And so they obviously the easy way to do it is to just get an easy 9 to 5 job and have that pay all your bills and stuff. But I kind of wanted to be in entertainment still, so I'm like, I want to produce shows so that I can get on stage and I could get paid for it, even though I'm not at the level of a headliner getting headliner money, right, to live on.
Right.
So I wrote a book that was called "How to Quit Your Day Job and Be a Full-Time Comedian," and it's like what a cheesy name, but like when I was studying the marketing of a book at the time, it said to on the title of the book to say exactly what that book is doing because I guess my goal at the time was to actually have the book circulate
Mhm.
and get to as many people as possible and to also make money, right?
Sure.
So when you're reading up on all the marketing tactics and techniques and stuff like that, that's one of the things set to do. I look back on it and I'm like, oh my god, did I really write that book? But the crazy thing is it's like it's still selling, people are still buying it after 10 years, so I guess the title did work. And so yeah, so basically what I did was during that time to so that I wouldn't get a regular admin day job was I just called all the casinos in Las Vegas and uh, until finally the M Resort Casino picked up my call and had me do a show on Friday and Saturday nights and paid me well for it as a producer and
Mhm.
paid the comics well as well. So it was enough so that I could live. And then I had a bunch of shows off the strip that I produced that I charged tickets for and that I made money with. So I was able to actually do it full time.
That's awesome. And Vegas is such a great spot for stand up because there's a new group of tourists or a new crowd every day.
Yeah.
So you don't need to just appeal to the regulars. I mean, it's great if you have them. But I'm curious, what are some of the lessons you learned from producing a show that impacted your own stand up?
Wherever you are in the world trying to produce a show, um, the ticket sales or the attendance of the show will come from many different sources. You can't just rely on Eventbrite or Groupon or for here the ticket seller that sells the most tickets is Vegas.com. You just can't rely on all of those places. You do seat fillers, you do sales funnels, you do Facebook ads, you do SEO, you do radio promos, you do anything and everything so that you'll get one or two people or five people, from all these different places. And then when you add them all up, you get a decent audience.
Hmm. And a city like Vegas, it's so competitive. Like How does a comedy show stand out from another one?
So um, it's in the same way, it's like you have a brand. You make sure you create your brand from the beginning. I don't care if it's you're on day one or year 10. Okay, you create your brand for each show, and you create. So my parent company is Tickle Me Comedy, and then I have brands underneath it. And so you make sure you create your brand, your social media follows through with that brand, and uh, and then from there you reach out to all the different ways to sell tickets and get people to the show.
Nice. So
The branding is important because after 10 years, everybody knows Tickle Me Comedy are these up and coming, funny, hilarious comedians that no one's heard of, but the shows are really good.
yeah, and that's that was sort of the Comedy Cellar at one point, or even the Improv. I mean,
Right.
brands can change, but there's something to be said for finding the more undiscovered talent, especially if you're going to go out later that night. I mean, not everyone wants to see Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, it is kind of cool to see the next wave.
Yeah, that's right.
And for folks out there who are unfamiliar with your Vegas clubs, they're great, and I want all of everyone listening to go millions of times over. How would
Yeah.
you describe the experience?
So for I have a show called the Downtown Comedy Lounge. The slogan is "No Filter Fun." It's at Notoriety Theater in the downtown of Las Vegas, right on Fremont Street. There's an area called Neonopolis, which is this cool new area in the downtown. It's behind like the Heart Attack Grill, if you know that place. So you go up. It's weird because it's in this area of this relatively unknown area of the downtown of Vegas, and you go there and you go up this elevator, and you're not sure of what this. It might be some sort of dingy experience, and then when you actually get to the club, you're like, wow, this looks like it's could be on the strip, right? And then you go into the club, and then you have this nice higher end, more elegant experience when you walk in, and you go into the comedy club, and it's like it's studio seating, and you have the big screens, and you're having a seat and having a drink and just enjoying what it feels like you're at the Letterman, you're at the Tonight Show or something like that, and then you're watching a comedy show.
Yeah, it's like the Tonight Show times 25. I mean, like it has that stadium seating, but it's way bigger,
Yeah.
and it's unique. It's a great place. I love performing there. Uh, but it's not just comedy. Like if people want to hang out after the show, what can they do, Isaac?
Yeah, so there are several different rooms or several different theaters and stages in the Notoriety Theater. So, for example, you have the Robin Leach room, where it's more of a cocktail loungy kind of room, right? And they have, we have everything from magic to hypnosis to drag show to a male show to, music and acoustic guitars and, singers and dancers. So all different kinds of shows, rock bands. And then you have another room called the Chandelier Room, which is a much bigger venue, and they have like some EDC events in there, Skankfest and other events. And then there's like more like movie theater type rooms in the back for like smaller shows. So it's a whole huge entertainment venue.
It is a huge entertainment venue. It's a lot of fun. So Isaac, what is your vision for whether it's Tickle Me or just kind of your own brand going forward?
So yeah, I do. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that we're planning to break the Guinness Book of World Records show in January 19th to the 23rd. I can't say the venue yet, but it's on the Las Vegas Strip, and it's a very nice comedy club. And so we're having that. There's going to be over like 50 nonprofits, over 100 comedians performing there, and you'll see it on my site, ticklemecomedy.com. But the vision is I've always wanted to have um, a bunch of comedy clubs, a chain of comedy clubs. Like no one's really figured it out how to create a long-lasting, long-standing chain franchise of comedy clubs around the U.S. and around the world, and that's what I want to do. And so, I am figuring out how to do that. I'm enjoying the process, and I'm just enjoying producing shows and learning how to do that, one show at a time.
I love it. And what record are you attempting to break? Or is it?
Nashville's about 10 years ago, Nashville Stand Up, which is a comedy club in Nashville. They had a show, and they had a stand-up comedy club show that was 80 hours long, and so that's the record we're going to break. All different kinds of comedians were there. Harold Buress was there. Ralphie May was there. Yeah.
So it's not just Chappelle doing 80 hours. There's going to be
others. Oh, yeah,
there's
going to be several comedians.
Well, I think that's a worthwhile goal. Obviously you have a lot of cool things ahead of you, Isaac. But kind of looking back, what are you most proud of that you've achieved in your career so far?
That's well, building the Tickle Me Comedy Club brand. Here in Las Vegas. So like so many people have been able to come to the shows, and what I really am proud of is the effect that I have. Sometimes I know about it, sometimes I don't, and the influence that I've had on either other comics in the audience. So there's so many times where audience members have told me, it's like, thank God for your show. I'm going through a lot. My husband is going through cancer, and all of that. So
it's funny. I ran a show for about 6 years in Los Angeles, and there was this lady who was dying. I didn't know that, but she was like, stage 4 cancer, and we would chat, not too extensively, but she would always say, thank you for this. And then like later I just kind of asked her, like, what's your status? And she's like, it's not good. She's like, I'm not going to be around very long. And then she wasn't, but she always came to the shows. And like, that was so rewarding. I was like, I'm giving this person, I mean, it wasn't just me, obviously, it was like the performers, some reason to smile. And she was like laughing and like, literally going through the toughest thing any of us could ever experience. So
that's right.
Wow. So for folks out there who, they want to know, like, how can they support you? Where can we funnel these people? What websites, what books, where should they go, Isaac?
Yeah, just go to ticklemecomedy.com, ticklemecomedy.com, and you could find me on Instagram at Comic Isaac Israel.
Comic Isaac Israel, check it out. And before I go, I always like to ask my guests this. Isaac, what are you most optimistic about?
I am most optimistic about achieving my vision, and my vision is to be completely transparent with you. My vision is one day to have 888. I love that number. I love the number 888 comedy clubs all around the world, and just Tickle Me Comedy Clubs. That where people can really enjoy comedy and other kinds of arts.
I love it. 887 is too few. You got to go bigger. Well, Isaac, Israel, please join us again. But I really appreciate your time.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.